Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Knockout Data Insights channel. I'm Kalina, and together with Oleg, we are super excited about all of the updates that are about to happen in this new year within Power BI. But before we continue with our videos focusing on updates and tips and tricks for the latest updates, this year, we also wanted to reflect on what's been happening over the past year and cover some of the new features available in Power BI, which we find most significant ones. Now, we won't be able to cover all of them, but we will focus on the ones that really matter for us, and we will explain why. Oleg, would you mind to start?
Yeah, sounds good. So I thought there were two really big updates in 2024. And one of those is the introduction of visual calculations. So a visual calculation means that you can write DEX code specifically within your visual. So how the data looks in your visual is essentially the data model inside of it that you're working with. Whereas typically when we work with measures, we have to take into account the entire semantic model and all the different rows and relationships in the model play a factor, and it always increases the complexity and skill required to create some of the measures. So I'll just give a quick example. I have a simple data set with dates and revenues, and I also have products. So it's a grocery store that sells fruits and vegetables. And let's say I wanted to show how, with each day, like a running total, how much our revenue has been growing. And in the past, we would be forced to create a measure, something that looks like this. And there's lots of variations of running totals depending on which kind of columns you have. But in this case, I just have a date and I just want to do a running total of revenue. So I would write it this way. I would do a calculate sum of the revenue column and then add a filter for all sales and then create this condition where the date is less than the maximum date in the fact sales table, which for experienced Power BI developers, this makes sense, but for a new or an intermediate user, it might be a little complex. And this is just a simple example. Like, let's say I wanted to introduce product names to this. I'll undo that. So here's how the numbers look. So you see the revenue is increasing. Now let's say I introduce product names to the visual, then the running total doesn't make as much sense anymore. It's still technically correct for that date, but it's duplicating the total for each product because I didn't have any specific code for the products in them. So if I wanted to account for this change, I would have to do something like this. So here's another measure. And this other measure, I had to adjust the code. So the first part of the code is still the same, but instead of doing the dates, I'm doing the same condition for row numbers. And I had to do this, I had to create another helper measure where I sequentially number each row based on the date and based on the product name alphabetically. So now you see the number of code I had to write more than doubled. And this is still fine if you are planning to reuse certain measures in multiple parts of your report and multiple visuals, if there's a specific use case for it. But the Power BI team decided to make our lives a lot easier. And for example, we can achieve this same result with just one simple function. And in fact, it's one of the pre-built ones. So if you click on New Visual Calculation, you can click Custom, where you write your own code, or you can just select one of the ones they give us so that we can just fill in the fields. So if I click Running Sum, see it already generated the function for us. So running sum is one of the new function that also comes with visual calculations, but you can also use existing DAX functions for it as well. So sum of revenue. And there you go. It was really easy. Now it produced the exact same results as the measure that I created, the second one that uses the helper column. So I thought this was pretty cool because, with DAX, I feel like sometimes when you write the code, it gives you unexpected results. And that's because the data you see is not necessarily the data that's behind the scenes. Whereas with visual calculations, it's exactly that way. So if you have experience with using SQL or any, Excel or anything else, you're kind of working with what you see. So I think it's very similar and it makes our lives easier. So before I continue, Kalina, do you have any thoughts on this, or do you have experience with using some of these visual calculations?
Yeah, thanks for sharing so far. If I started using these visual calculations quite often in my reports, specifically in cases where calculation is needed only for one or two visuals, so it's not repetitive on many pages, or it's not repetitive across other reports in a semantic model. And I quite often tend to use the percent of parent, which is similar to what you did with the running sum. So it's similar caveat. So if you do percent of parent, every time you add a new dimension, now you have the date, but if you add products or more, every time you need also to adjust your calculation. And just having this in visual calculations makes our life easier, so no need to rework the formula, and that's already being taken care of.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's another very useful one that quite a lot of analysts probably had to do in the past as well through, with a lot more complexity. So percent of parent, it is also one of the pre-built ones, and I'll just quickly show this here as well with the same data set. But it's just as easy to create. So in here, I'll just do the revenue again, and the axis you can do based on columns or rows, or you can select which field that you're using. So I'm using the date, and there you go. It populated for us. It did automatically create it as a decimal, so it's as I mentioned, you can also write custom DAX code, so we can also just edit it. Let's say I want to format it as a percentage, and I'll use 2 decimal points. And now I format it as a percentage. So yeah, that was quite simple, whereas in the past it required a lot more work. So that's my first update for today. The second big update I wanted to share with you today is the introduction of AI in Power BI. So now we can use AI through a tool called Copilot. We can use it in Power BI Desktop and Power BI Service. Right now I'm using Power BI Desktop, and I'll just show you a couple things they can do. One is we just talked about DAX measures, so you can ask Copilot to create a DAX measure for you based on the columns in your data model. So the good thing is that it knows all the tables and columns in your semantic model, so it can generate something for you. And typically, you do have to be very specific with the prompts because if you're vague, it might give you some results that you're not happy with. But if you're specific, then I found the results to be quite reliable. It does not currently support creating measures, but it can at least create the code for you, and then you can just write or copy paste it and create it. So I won't show that part now, but I will show another feature is you can also create data visualizations. So you can just describe what you want, and I'll just do that right now. Create a chart that shows revenue trends. So it's a pretty simple request. I can do that. I recommend focusing. Let me know. Yes, yes, these are correct fields. Okay, so it created a simple trending revenue chart. I could have also given it instructions to format it a certain way, like use colors and fonts. It can do that as well. So I think that's pretty cool. One thing I want to add is it can only create charts based on fields that you have in your data model. So if I were to say, give me month over month revenue for top 5 products, technically it's possible to do that, but I don't have a month column in my data model, nor do I have what a top 5 product is. It needs to be defined. So I would need to have like a flag or something to do that. So as long as you have the fields, it can do that. But at this moment, it's not able to create like columns and measures that are needed to create this visualization that you're asking for. I'm sure it will improve and get better over time, but right now it is quite limited. But I think it's already a big leap, and it has many useful scenarios. So I talked about DAX measures and visualizations. One more thing I wanted to show, which I think is quite practical and reliable at this moment, and that's documentations and data definitions. So, in the past, we pretty much had to manually always type out definitions, and that's Copilot can help us with that. So, for example, when I select a measure, I can ask to create a description of the measure with Copilot. So here's it's working. Calculates the running sum of revenue column in a fact sales table up to the current date in the data. That makes sense to me. So you can always try again and generate another response. But the code here was pretty simple, so it gave us the right answer immediately. So I'm gonna keep it. So I think it's a very useful tool, especially for complex measures where you don't have to manually describe it. So Copilot can just do that for you. It's a big time saver, and I'm a big fan of it. So those are my favorite changes from the past year. I'll turn it over to you now, Kalina.
Thank you, Oleg. Let me share my screen and I'll continue with the updates. Right. So I wanted to talk about the info view functions as a start. And what these functions do is that they instantly generate insights about your models, tables, relationships, and columns. And what I'm sharing here is an example of how you could use these DAX functions to create automated documentation for your semantic model. So we'll go through this example with all of the 4 functions that are now available. Now, of course, this is not a new information that a developer could access. We were able to see this metadata before, but the Power BI team made it easier for us. Like in the past, we had to use some external tools. For example, for these info view functions and similar information, we could use DAX Studio. Then we had these DMV views, and when you click on one of those views, you get a query for this view, and you can copy this. You can connect to analysis services using the respective details here. You can write your query and access the same information before, with the caveat that you had to query each table separately, and then to create many more relationships to get to the same information that we have here in this view, for example, for measures. Now, starting with measures, I'll show you how I generated this data. So each InfoView function creates calculated table for you in your model, just by typing InfoView measures in this case, and you have quite a lot of fields here in the measures table. So we have like unique identifier of this field, name, the table which measures belongs to, some descriptions, and some other fields as well. In my report here, I've picked the ones that I find most relevant for report users who are curious to see the documentation behind it and what each measure means. So I've left the measure name, the DAX expression. The description here comes from the modeling tab in the properties. So if I open some of the measures, then here we have this description field that, as Oleg showed, we could generate with Copilot as well and speed this up. And then these descriptions for measures are shown in the metadata in our documentation. And we also have the table where we created each measure. Then we also have a documentation about the relationships in our semantic model. We have access to information like what's the cross-filtering behavior of the relationships, what's the cardinality, what are the tables involved in each relationships, and more specifically the columns. As well, this is summarized just in one relationship column for more compact view. And the last two InfoView functions that we have are on models and on tables and columns. And for this, you can create a relationship between the tables and columns based on the table name, as it's field available in both tables. And like this, you have each table, what are the columns in each table, the data type, the description of each column if you added this information to the semantic model, and some details about each field and the storage mode of each table. So in a nutshell, why are these functions so useful? Well, you get instant documentation. With these functions, your model is practically documenting itself. Also on collaboration side, it's more easier now to share information about your semantic model. Even when someone asks for it, you can create these views in a couple of minutes and share with them. You don't need to write long documentation, and also take care of maintaining it over time, because this is a DAX function. So every time you add a new measure or a new table, it's already automatically available in your automated documentation as well. And I also find these functions quite useful for troubleshooting, especially in huge semantic models with a lot of measures, tables, and relationships. Now, the second update that I wanted to share with you is more on the semantic model side. And it's related to the new view that we see in Power BI Desktop, the Model Explorer. It's something that the team released late 2023, but it was generally available since 2024. And Before that, we had this tables view only, and here, yeah, you could see only the tables, what's hidden, measures created under each table. And now this information is available under the tables section in the semantic model. So if I open tables, for example, I have this summary view of how many columns I have. If I have any hierarchies, what are the measures I've created in this table, and on partitions. Partitions may be quite useful, especially when you work with big tables and if you enable the incremental refresh for a specific table of your model. Then let's say in the date dimension, here I have a hierarchy. Let's show it's quite handy also to have it separated like that. And besides this table view that we see in this Model Explorer, there are also like relationships and measures which we are quite familiar with from what we could see before in Power BI Desktop. So with relationships, it's just another view, quite compact and handy one of the relationships between tables. It lists the tables and what columns are used specifically for build this relationship. For measures, this was something that a lot of Power BI developers created in their models in the past. So they created this underscore measures table and collected all of their measures in one place. Now this is no longer needed, as this measures section here combines all of the measures you have in your model without you explicitly creating this measures calculated table. And the other features of your semantic model that you see here, like cultures, perspectives, calculation groups, they were not accessible before from Power BI Desktop. So you had to use third-party tools to create and even to view them. And now we can see with cultures, for example, that our semantic model supports two different languages, English and German. We can also see with perspectives that we've created two perspectives, and we can easily switch between perspectives from Power BI Desktop when we want to expose this to someone. And the most exciting part from this Model Explorer view is the calculation groups and the fact that now they are natively available in Power BI Desktop. So what calculation groups allow you to do is to modify the context of existing measures, and they simplify the creation of common repetitive calculations. That can save quite a lot of time for Power BI developers. So before having this available in Power BI Desktop, we had to use a tabular editor and here to create different calculation items and then only to use them, but we couldn't edit them through Power BI Desktop. And this is really good news that this is available, especially for Power BI developers working in companies that are not allowing the use of third-party tools. Because imagine we have a scenario where we have the request to create 10 different measures, like let's say we have sales, cost of goods sold, profit, margin, and then we also need to create these in different scenarios, like different calculations, like year to date, month to date, and let's say we have to create 5 of these different calculation items. So that leaves us with a total of 50 measures that we need to create. So for each measures, 5 of these calculations. And now with calculation groups, we can do this just with 15 measures, which is really nice and makes the work of Power BI developers more efficient. So this was my second update, and yeah, thanks for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope that we see you next time. Oleg, over to you.
Yeah, so those are our favorite updates that we wanted to discuss with you. So please let us know if you agree or not and what you think is the biggest update last year and why. And as always, thank you for joining us. So have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.